What's up everyone? We're starting the MiG-29, but first I think we really need to make a point. We will not be building this one out of the box in the Russian paint scheme and the Russian decals. We will be doing Ukrainian decals and a Ukrainian digital camouflage. I got these from actually a Ukrainian hobby company, and so that was pretty exciting when I got that package. We're going to be using Testor's liquid cement, and we're going to be using mostly Tamiya paint products. The liquid cement, I will say, the bottle is very difficult to get glue out of, but the glue is really good, so it does kind of counterbalance the issues. And there's actually one point in this video where you'll see just nothing happen for a protracted amount of time, and that is me trying to get the paint to flow, or the glue to flow. We'll be using micromask. So micromask, the best way I can describe it, it's like if you were to let white glue cure on your skin. It forms that little layer, and then you can just peel it off. It's really good for doing small areas that you don't really have a good way of getting masking tape into, such as cockpits. So in part 1 we'll be focusing on the cockpit. So this is the Monogram 1:48 kit. There's a couple of choices for MiG-29s. There is Great Wall, which I elected not to go for. There's Zvezda, which the chances of me buying a Zvezda kit right now, given the country of origin, is precisely 0. And I've never actually bought one, so one day, maybe when everything calms down and everything goes back to more amiable standings, I may try one. But for the current time being, with events in the world, there is no chance I will be buying one. And then I believe there's an Academy kit. I've never actually built an Academy model either. I do have a couple, I believe. So in the future video, we'll break one out and we'll get started. So the cockpit on the MiG-29 is gray. Some of you may have already noticed the mistake I have made so far, and some of you may catch on a little bit later. But we're going to start with airbrushing the entire cockpit flat gray, and move on from there to do some of the detail colors. I did do some of the detailing in this video off screen, mostly because at 1:48 this cockpit's very small in feature, and so I had a hard time trying to film it, keep it in focus, while also not just mess paint all over the part. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and paint the seat. We're going to go ahead and do the dark coloring first on the seat, so the black headrest, and then we'll move on and do the green. We'll do the green seat back. The seat belts are molded into this seat kit, or into the seat in this kit, so there's no need to do kind of a one of my tricks is use little strips of masking tape and then paint those so they stick to the chair, and you can arrange them how you like. And if you have some thin electrical wire strands, you can make some little buckles. Now the back of the panel isn't actually visible in the kit once it's assembled into the upper section of the fuselage, but I just went ahead and painted the back anyway, just in case there's any edges or anything like that. And also it's typically a good habit to have. So here you can see we're going to do the green on the seat back, and you can see, as I mentioned, those seat belts molded in. Now, this being a relatively cheap Monogram Revell kit, some of these features are a little thicker than they would be in real life. You know, at 1:48 scale, that would be a very, very large seat belt. But you know, for those of us not doing the math in our heads, it works out. So here you can actually clearly see the mistake I make. And we're going to zoom in on it in just a second, but you should really be starting with the darker color first, and the darker, more localized, easier to mask color first, because as you'll see here, I have some overspray. That would not have happened had I painted the green first and then masked off the seat bottom and then painted the rest of the gray. So here we're going to touch and do the black on the top of the HUD for the MiG-29. It's not a very complex kit, so there's no glass elements like there were on the A10 we just did, and it's just got the anti-glare paint job that's pretty standard among most fighters. You know, we don't want pilots being blinded by any reflections off their instrument panels or the area just below the windscreen. So standard paint job. We'll tailor it in with the gray of the panel, and then the panel also has black gauges. I didn't really notice any colored buttons or switches or anything like that when I looked at MiG-29 or Ukrainian MiG-29 pictures. However, I will note that the panel actually didn't really match any of the MiG-29, at least from Ukraine, any of their panel layouts. So here you can see exactly what I mentioned with the micro mask. You just kind of let it sit on, or you paint it on, you let it set, and then you can just peel it off. So I actually used my airbrush needle, and that is really good at picking up the edge. We'll go in and we will paint the seat belts for the cockpit seat. There are white on the MiG-29, at least the Ukrainian ones. And so we're going to hand brush it. I will give a heads up to anybody who is hand brushing. You know, even if you're hand brushing and you still need to use thinner. It's a lesson I had to learn the hard way once I got out of college and decided I need to pick up a hobby again in between racing. I decided on this one, and I didn't use thinner for my first couple of airplanes, which, let's be honest, were mostly Spitfires. And yeah, their paint jobs aren't the greatest. Once I started airbrushing and mixing in thinner, you know, it was kind of a realization of, oh my goodness, the paint job on these is so much better. What did I do differently? And I realized it's actually nothing to do with the airbrush. A lot of it's to do with thinner. The airbrush does help, but you know, realistically, you can achieve an absolutely astonishing paint job with, or done by hand, if you really put the time into it and practice it and use thinner. I have zero interest in pursuing that, at least hand brushing an entire plane again, and so I'll be sticking with the airbrush. As I mentioned, I did do some details off the screen, so you can see some of the buttons are colored in now, and some I've scraped away to look more silver. Painted that little canister on the back in red. I really should have put the control stick in first here before doing the panel. It made it a little bit more difficult, but we were ultimately successful in getting there. Go ahead and we need to flip over the upper fuselage. I will mention I didn't do it on camera, but I did cut off those extra mold remnants that are sticking up from the upper fuselage. So we flip it over and we go ahead and do the gray paint coat around where the cockpit will sit in the upper fuselage, just so we don't have any just bare plastic sitting there and it meshes into a nice paint scheme. I will point out, this model is not quite accurate for what the Ukrainians actually fly, at least not right now, and I'm still working out whether I will or will not mold it to be more accurate. The Ukrainians have the MiG-29 MU1 or MU2. They have kind of a hump back for extra avionics. This one doesn't. It's going to take a lot of work to mold that in. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, but we'll see. So here's actually what I was talking about with trying to get the glue out of the bottle. It can take a minute. It can take a lot of shaking, and ultimately you'll get there, and the glue's very good once it does come out, but it can be very frustrating, particularly if you're filming your builds, because you trigger the camera and you're shaking the bottle and you're just not getting anywhere. Once we install the cockpit into the upper section of fuselage, we're done for this video. This is episode 1. Hopefully we'll be on a weekly basis, but we'll see. Thank you.